Hi, good morning, and welcome to the School of Serenity. We are being broadcast by Walk to Serenity and by 4MTV, and we are a mental health initiative to bring mental health awareness globally. And so we've got an exciting show for you today. I am your host, Kihm. I am a psychotherapist, an energy worker, and an author. And I have a private practice blending holistic therapy and meditative practices, as well as somatic energy work. And I'm so excited for our guest here today. We are going to welcome Chelsea Cole, and I'm going to share with you about what we'll be diving into today. She is a licensed psychotherapist specializing in narcissistic abuse and helping introverts and empaths thrive. She's also a certified partner trauma therapist, a registered play therapist, a level 1 certified Gottman method couples therapist, and she's a board member of the Yao Foundation. Chelsea is also currently writing a book on understanding and healing from narcissistic abuse. And these are all such important topics, and these credentials are incredible. So thank you for being here with us today, Chelsea.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And for anyone watching, I'll go ahead and tell you, you'll notice my cat's playing in the background. So I apologize for any background noise. It is morning where I am, and they love their morning playtime.
I love it. I love it. I've had my daughter come in and sit on my lap in the middle of the interview.
Oh,
So we welcome pets, dogs, just, real life. This is just nitty gritty real life stuff, right?
very true. Yep.
Yes. So you are on such an important mission, and I love what you're doing to help people heal. Tell us about how you got into this field and why you specialize in narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, I could talk about that for so long. I was
Yeah.
thinking about how do you shorten that? But basically, I tell people you can only have experienced so many narcissistic relationships until you have to figure out what's going on.
Mm,
And so I've had personal relationships with narcissists in home, family, work, intimate relationships, all of it. I get it. I see it so much with my clients. And so it was really just a combination of my personal interests, of course, as a therapist, wanting to understand people, why they
yes.
do what they do.
Yep.
And I've had these personal experiences. And so I just started taking a deep dive. What is happening? What is this crazy making, guilt tripping relationships that I keep experiencing that my clients keep telling me about?
Yes.
And yeah, that it just kind of it went from there. And the really big thing is people in general, we're getting better, but people don't get it. I mean, you go and tell someone about a relationship issue you're having, you often get advice about how you probably need to communicate better. They probably just misunderstood. I'm sure they didn't mean it that way. You should go share
Mhm.
your feelings with them. All okay advice in healthy relationships,
Yep.
but in narcissistic relationships, that will completely backfire and keep you trauma bonded and keep you in the relationship so much longer than you need to be.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got to bring awareness around that because the rules don't apply in therapy when
No.
you're working with somebody who's narcissistic. You throw all those healthy relationship, communication skills out the window. They just simply don't apply. And I love that you've had this personal experience. I personally believe as a therapist that what I've been through and my hardships are what make me the therapist that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what allows me to be able to help people. And so we do specialize in what we've personally experienced. I mean, mine is divorce, mine is highly sensitive people, yours is empath and narcissist. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that hands-on experience, there is the training ground with our degrees that allow us to
Yes.
really see people and meet them where they are. It's like, we're not just talking about it from this clinical perspective. We actually personally know what it is like to be in that position.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so much. I mean, I I think because I've been through it, I often tell my clients, like, I'm helping you and I'm helping me, and we're all helping each other,
Yes.
like globally figuring this out because
Yes.
it's not like I don't have any narcissistic relationships in my world anymore. I mean, this is still something that I have to deal with. And so when I'm going through it, it just reminds me every day how in the trenches my clients are, how I'm still experiencing it. And I think it just makes you very present and very compassionate because you don't get it just intellectually, you get it
Yes.
emotionally, physiologically, like you get it in every way. And I think
Yes.
that really helps, and hopefully um, kind of resonates with my clients as well, because they know I'm not just talking theoretically, I'm talking in real life.
Absolutely. You know what it feels like in your body. You know what the
Hmm.
boundary violations are. You have, you know, boots on the ground experience. Yeah. So tell us, what are the signs that somebody could be in a narcissistic relationship, or what are the signs of that abuse? Because I think that many of us, I've been in them, and I'm a therapist, and I'm like, how did I miss the sign? Like, how did I
Yeah.
miss it? I just, I think many of us can get kind of sideswiped by it and not even realize. Have you found
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because oftentimes narcissists are really good at preying on people who are naturally compassionate,
Yes.
empathetic,
Yes.
kind-hearted, assume the best, give second chances. I mean,
Yes.
the kind of people that you hope are therapists and are in helping professions.
Yes.
So, absolutely, we can be kind of drawn into these relationships too. So, recognizing that you're in a narcissistic relationship is kind of multi layered because you experience on every level. I think one of the first things that people start recognizing when they're in toxic relationships is the amount of overthinking that's happening, the amount of second guessing, self doubts, self criticism, self blame, guilt feeling like you're on this never ending merry-go-round that no matter what you try, no matter what solution, no matter how, quote, good you try to be, or ways you try to make things work,
Mm.
nothing is ever enough. I mean, the two mantras of a narcissistic relationship are you never feel good enough, and nothing is ever enough for them. Like you can't win. And
Mm.
so if you can resonate with that, then I would highly recommend checking out more narcissistic relation or resources, because it's highly likely you're dealing with some kind of toxic relationship.
Right, right. Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting because when you're in that space, you're feeling so vulnerable that you really do
Hmm.
think something is wrong with you. And what would you say? How do we get sort of outside? Do you know what I'm saying there?
Yes, yes, very much. And I mean, narcissists depend on that, right? I mean, they depend on you taking the responsibility. There is always this a relationship with a narcissist is always unbalanced. Like they don't take any responsibility, you take all the responsibility.
Yes,
They're
yes,
not empathetic, so you're overly empathetic. Um,
yes.
they don't self reflect, so you self reflect all the time. You end up feeling like you're doing the work for two people.
Right. Okay. This is a good distinction. These are
Yeah.
really key factors, and it makes you feel a little crazy. I mean,
Hmm.
do you start I've started questioning my own sanity sometimes because they are really, really charming until they're not.
Yeah. Well,
You
that's
know
that.
what I mean? Like,
Yes, that's that narcissistic cycle of abuse is the idealize, the love bomb, because they have to have a way to draw you in. So, they're charming, they're charismatic. If you're dealing with a grandiose, which we can get into the differences of a
right.
grandiose
Yeah.
and vulnerable narcissist, but if you're dealing with like the typical narcissist, they're charming, they're talkative, they tend to be extroverted, so they're very alluring. If they can
Very.
be physically attractive, but there's just something about them that pulls you in. But then as soon as you're in, as soon as you're like, oh my goodness, I'm believing in this fairy tale, like this is amazing, that's when they've got you.
Yes. And it's almost my experience is like a flip switches.
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that what it feels like for you? It's like they've got you
Yeah.
in, you're in this fairy tale, and then there's a flip. And I feel like there's whiplash. I'm left going like,
Yes.
what just happened? Like it was
Yes.
feeling so good.
It's so disorienting. Yes, I was just talking to clients all the time, basically, but this morning about that. And there's a period when you reflect on the relationship where you know that the flip switched, as you said, like it changes. And it's whenever you start settling into the relationship, when they feel like they've got you, when
Mhm.
you're really invested. Maybe you just got engaged, maybe you just committed yourself to the relationship, maybe you just got married, and then slowly the criticisms, the contempt, the gaslighting, the belittling, they
Yeah.
used to, be so supportive of this thing. Now they criticize you for it all the time, and they tell you how ridiculous it is and how stupid it is and what a waste of time it is. And they just find ways to slowly but intentionally poke
Mhm.
holes in your sense of self, your sense of self-esteem, your sense of self-worth until you no longer, even feel like you anymore.
Right, right. And I've gotta say, initially, I loved the love bombing. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is amazing. This person loves me so much." I now know it's a red flag. Here I am in
Yeah.
my 40s. I now know it's a red flag. But initially, who doesn't love to be loved bomb?
Yeah.
Because you're like, "Wow, I am this amazing. This person loves me so much." And so I think it's really important that we know that that intense love bombing is such a huge red flag.
Mhm. Yeah, if anything feels too much, like if it feels
Yes.
too good to be true,
Yes.
it
Yes.
is.
It is.
There's something wrong. And for us to kind of know what makes us sometimes susceptible to these relationships is if you have a history of not feeling good enough, if you have a history of questioning your self-worth or coming from maybe a narcissistic family system or one where you never felt good enough for a parent, then to initially be told you're amazing, to be showered with gifts and praise and
Yeah.
adoration and admiration, all those things, you feel like you're finally getting your fairy tale. But
Yes.
healthy relationships are slow and steady, and they're made up of foundational values, respect, honesty, loyalty, and narcissists completely lack that. So they're really good at painting this great picture, but it lacks substance.
Yes. Yes. And one thing I struggle with as the therapist is that I have clients come to me and we have this magical connection because it's fast, it's hot, it's heavy. I've never felt this way before. I've met my soulmate. They think of it as in these soulmate terms. And I'm sitting here and I clearly see all the
Yes.
signs, and, try and point them out, but they are just so deep in their fairy tale, it's hard for them to recognize it at that point.
Sometimes. And that's why I often start with people helping them uncover past traumas,
Mhm.
childhood, family relationships to help them see. Because you're right. If we try to start with kind of poking holes in their what they think is a fairy tale relationship,
Yeah.
then they probably just won't come to therapy anymore. But
They
if we,
Yeah.
yeah,
If
if
I'm
we
like,
can,
"By the way, this is a narcissistic abusive relationship. We
yeah,
just haven't gotten to that point yet, but it's coming." I mean, that's
no.
not gonna work, right?
No, no. But if you can start with, wow, this sounds like really charming. Like this sounds like such an intense relationship. I wonder what your relationships were like growing up. Like, did you feel really
Mm,
seen and heard and validated? Or did you always kind of feel like you weren't enough? And you
mm,
can kind of go at it from like a backdoor perspective and help them see, oh, I have a vulnerability to really feeling or wanting to feel needed or valued, and
mhm.
sometimes that can kind of help them put on the brakes a bit.
Yeah, yeah. That's that's good. Yeah, thank you. Because 'cause I'm like, I see it so clearly," and it's hard when they haven't even gotten to the point yet where the flip switches, but
Right.
it's coming.
Yes, and even sometimes educating. I mean, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I love talking with you and other therapists and
Yeah.
raising awareness about this, because when people know what healthy and toxic feels like, they're so much
Yes.
more prepared, to identify the difference. The fact is, we're raised on fairy tales,
We are.
Disney movies.
Yep.
When you come from that kind of culture, you assume that the more romantic, the bigger gesture, the more they love you,
Yeah.
instead of, oh, healthy relationships are just consistent, they show up
Yes.
on time, they're kind, they're respectful.
Yeah.
Like those are the things we should be valuing.
Absolutely, and it's interesting because, they do feel a little bit more boring compared to, like,
Yes.
do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes that
Mhm.
consistency is like people crave those adrenaline
Yeah.
rushes and the fire and all of that, but the healthy ones are just stable, and
Calm.
sometimes people can see the stability as more boring.
Yes, and that definitely, I've seen that be true when you're raised in environments where there was like this hot and cold, like where there
Yes.
was a foundation for a trauma bond laid.
Right.
where there was, you know, love and affection and abuse and yelling and trauma and a
Mhm.
making up phase. Like when you grew up with that, then you start equating, oh, so, people who love each other, sometimes they just yell. Or
Yeah.
if so and so had a bad day, then they may come in and be critical, but then they're going to make up for it later. So it's
Right.
okay. And
Right.
so, those kinds of beliefs and expectations get kind of formed in childhood. So then you expect that in relationships. So the healthy relationships initially feel, quote, boring. But
Right. Right.
given enough time and healing, those relationships actually feel very safe and comforting.
Yes, yes, and I'm like, "Give me boring." I am so
Yes,
ready for
absolutely.
boring. I've had all the fire, all the passion, give me stability, safety, and boring. I am check, sign me up for that now, but
Yep.
I do think that sometimes, when we're younger or in different phase of our lives, we do feed off those highs of those adrenaline rushes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I can relate to that. Um, in my personal experiences, for me, my dad was more of a neglectful narcissist, which we don't really talk about what even that is. But they're just kind of emotionally absent. So initially, before I understood, I would have been attracted to people who, love bomb, idealize
Yeah,
that whole phase because I was missing that.
yes.
Now, yeah, no, my my current relationship is very healthy, and it's consistent and it's stable and it's all the, quote, boring things, which now I just find completely comforting.
Yes,
I don't
yes.
want any love bombing. I'll take respect and kindness every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It's an evolution. It has been for
Yes.
me, this evolution. So that's a perfect transition. Tell us about the different types of the narcissist. There are some distinctions there and different actual types.
Yeah, that's something we don't often think about, but the presentation, depending on the type of narcissist, can look and feel very different. That's
Mhm.
something that will be in my book that I'm working on that we can talk about in a bit, but I really
Yeah.
break down the main 6 different types and how they look and feel differently so you can recognize them regardless. But the 2 big types that we talk about are grandiose and vulnerable narcissists, or sometimes called covert narcissists. So grandiose narcissist is that typical narcissist you think of when you hear the term. They're charming, they're charismatic, they tend to be extroverted, they're pretty socially adept, so they
Yes.
do pretty well making connections,
Yep.
and they're just very alluring at first, and so you're
Mhm.
easily drawn in by them. The vulnerable narcissists have this same entitlement as the grandiose narcissist, but their initial presentation is more victimized, sullen. A lot of people think they're depressed, down on their luck. So
Mm.
they draw people in by getting people to feel sorry for them, by
Oh,
getting people
interesting.
to kind of feel guilty for not helping them. Like
Ah,
a grandiose narcissist would say, "World, look how great I am." But a
mhm,
vulnerable narcissist would say, "Why doesn't the world see how great I am?" And so
mhm.
both obviously play on kind hearted people,
Yeah,
especially the vulnerable,
yeah.
who just want to, help you feel better about yourself. Maybe they think you're in a tough spot. So I'll help you. Let me point out all the positive things about you. But the problem is that's a
Mhm.
never ending cycle. And you
Yes.
start helping out of obligation instead of, out of just a choice.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, and it's so interesting because I'm a highly sensitive person and I think you might be as
Hmm.
well, but empaths, highly sensitive people. I mean, my therapist told me we will always attract those people.
Yeah.
Like it's not a matter of, oh, all of a sudden I'm at such a high vibration, like they're not attracted to me. They will always be attracted. And then it's my choice to recognize and say no.
Yes.
Is that
Absolutely.
true? I mean, they'll find you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I would venture to say that any of us will, all of us will experience a narcissist at some point
Mhm.
in our life, whether we realize it or not. But
Yeah,
especially empaths, highly sensitive people are vulnerable or susceptible because narcissists are attracted to what they lack. And
yeah,
so
yes,
narcissists are not empathetic, they're not compassionate.
yeah,
And so they are drawn to that in you, not because they want to at least consciously be like that, but they'll end up belittling you, criticizing you. That's the contempt. They have this entitled
mm,
disgust for things that, on some level, they know they should be, but aren't willing to be or aren't willing to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
to act in those ways. So yeah, empaths, highly sensitives, just empathetic people in general will always kind of be alluring to narcissists. So it's really important for us to take responsibility and set boundaries and identify
Yes.
toxic people.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's really important. Just especially for my population, I work with all women who are highly sensitive.
Yeah.
It's like there's like a sign on your head. It's like, okay,
That's right.
And it
Yes.
seems to me that narcissists don't really seek therapy.
They typically don't, because when you think about it, narcissism works for them.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, narcissism, we kind of value that sometimes in business and companies. If you're willing to put yourself first, your needs first, you're willing to brag about what you've done, always talk about your accomplishments,
Yeah.
triangulate people and make sure that you're in the top position.
Yeah.
All of those things kind of get validated a lot of times in business and corporate America. And then it works because people are attracted to their charm, their charisma. They get to control people's emotions and reactions by acting in entitled ways. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of times narcissists are like, I'm not crazy, you're crazy. You have the problem. You need therapy. You're the narcissist. They
Yes.
project all of those things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we even see it in politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, politicians.
It's within any, yeah. I mean, those are, I think, political public figures have natural draw for narcissists because they
Yeah.
have kind of like that built-in status, but
Yes.
honestly you see narcissists at every level.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Right. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. So this is all such good information. I'm just like taking it in because I just think it's so important that we recognize the signs and symptoms because it's just easy not to. So tell us about your book. I'm so excited that you're going to bring this, to a format where people can read and deep dive and learn more about this.
Yeah, my motivation for the book is really to give people kind of an ultimate guide understanding to what you need to understand about narcissism and then what you need to know to heal. So the first half of the book is really about, like I said, the 6 types of narcissists. What do they
Mhm.
look and feel like? How do you recognize them? What is the narcissistic cycle of abuse? What is narcissistic abuse? Because it is multi-layered. It is not just, you can't just, simply say, oh, this is narcissistic abuse. I mean, it's a process, it's a cycle, and it takes so many
Yes.
layers. So really understanding what that is, and then giving people a roadmap to healing. Like, what are the things you have to know? How do you set boundaries? What do you do about your personal susceptibilities or vulnerabilities to narcissists to make sure that you don't get into these relationships in the
Yes.
future? So it's
Yes.
like a really good overview of all of those, and it talks about some different things and puts them in a book form so you can just have it and you can take it to therapy, or it can jumpstart you into therapy, or it can
Yeah.
just be a companion guide to your own healing journey.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Do you have any projection date for when this is coming out?
My intention is early next year, so
Okay.
that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah, congratulations. This is so exciting.
Yes, thank you. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm just so glad there will be sort of this guidebook. And so what do people do if they think they are in a narcissistic relationship? I mean, what is the first step? Because I find it's challenging to get out of them.
Very much, yeah. And
Yeah.
so the first step is, sometimes people even have to get over this hurdle of feeling like a bad person for thinking that they are with a narcissist. Because if you truly
Mhm.
have been narcissistically abused, people carry a lot of guilt and shame about who, and maybe it's not your partner, maybe it's your mother, your
Yeah.
dad, your sibling, your friend, your
Yes.
coworker. And so people have a lot of beliefs around, you shouldn't think bad about your spouse, you shouldn't think bad about your parent. So there's hesitancy to even address it. So I would encourage people first, just allow yourself to explore. You're not making, you know, harsh or quick judgments. You're not even saying, hey, you are a narcissist. You're
Right.
just opening yourself up to explore it. So, really, the first step is gaining that understanding and awareness of healthy and toxic relationships. What
Mm,
do they look and feel like? What should I expect in a healthy relationship? And if you're not seeing those consistent patterns of kindness, respect, admiration, empathy, if you're getting criticisms
Mhm.
contemptuous looks and statements and gaslighting and belittling and criticisms, and you just have a general sense of never feeling enough in your relationship, then it's
Mhm.
definitely worth at least exploring and seeing, what's happening in your relationship.
And when does that stuff start usually?
Like the criticisms and the
Mhm.
contempt.
When?
Yeah, it tends to come after the love bombing phase, which there's no hard and fast rule of like how
Right,
long that lasts,
right.
but it can be, typically love bombing phase is a few months, a few
Yes.
weeks to a few months.
Yep.
But even within that phase, you can still see warning signs. So the fact that
Okay.
it feels like too much, that it feels like
Mhm.
a lot, that's a warning sign. And listen to how they talk about other people. Are they
Mm.
telling you about their past relationships and saying, "Oh, my ex is so crazy. They're so,
Yep.
they were so controlling. They're obsessed with me still."
Yes.
Um, if they talk bad about those relationships,
Yep.
um, they will start, slightly gaslighting or criticizing you, or maybe just saying something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, but you think, "Oh, it was probably just a misunderstanding. They probably didn't mean it that way." Do they ask about you and do they share about them? So
Mhm.
narcissists are very comfortable sharing about themselves.
Yep.
And
Uh,
sometimes in the beginning of the relationship, they will ask you, what are your deep fears and dreams and goals? And you think, oh my, we're really getting into it. We're connecting. But
yes.
are they sharing just as much? And are they really there for you empathetically when you're having a difficult emotion? Because oftentimes narcissists are just learning about that, quote, deep stuff to use it
Mhm.
against you later.
Mhm.
So, again, a relationship should be a natural progression. If you're talking about, something on a first date that you really wouldn't expect to talk about until you're a couple months in, that can be a warning sign too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Because I'm looking back and I can think of someone who everyone they dated was just crazy. And I'm like,
Mm,
well, this could be the first healthy relationship that they have. I'm a therapist.
right.
I know how to communicate. And then it's like, okay, Kara,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I had someone tell me that they were so happy that I was a therapist, that they just think it's amazing to have a partner and a therapist, that that's all they wanted and all they were looking for.
yeah.
And I mean, obviously that should have been a red flag, but I
Yep.
was like, "Oh yeah, like of course cuz that would be great. Oh, so you care about therapy, you want to
Yes.
improve." So I just put a
Yes.
positive spin on it, but really they were saying, "Oh, you can be my therapist and my partner and my everything."
Yep.
And that
Yep.
was too much.
Yes, yes, too much. I've had the same thing, and I thought the same thing. I was like, "Oh, well, they're invested in therapy, and they
Right.
have this healthy want to work through things." And so now
Yep.
I'm like, "I am not gonna be a therapist in my off time. That's a hell no."
Exactly.
Like like,
Exactly.
I'm not gonna be the therapist for my partner, I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing, looking for an equal, where it just
Yes.
feels balanced and equal. You know that feeling when it feels healthy, balanced, and equal, if they're
Mhm.
looking to you as, like, the muse or the teacher or something like that, it's like, "Oh, mm-mm," you know?
Yeah, and that's what can be alluring at first. I mean,
It
especially
is.
when you're in the helping profession. I mean, hopefully you got into it because you wanted to help people. So you're kind of familiar and comfortable being in that helper role.
Yes.
But you shouldn't be in that role, in an intimate relationship. It should be, like you said, balanced. And that's why we have to take time to heal ourselves in
Mm,
order to be able to recognize that. Because if you've had toxic relationships in the past, if you were come from an enmeshed family system where there were no boundaries and everyone expects everyone to be available at all times and you do anything for the family and there's no boundaries there, then it feels kind of familiar to be in a relationship where someone
yes.
also wants everything from you.
It does, it does. So as we heal ourselves, we're more capable of recognizing and seeing the signs because we
Yes.
know what the unhealthy patterns are that we're healing through our own trauma work.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if I had to sum up one thing that would be most helpful for anyone in any situation, whether you're in a narcissistic relationship or not, is to trust your intuition.
Yes.
To have that moment where you take a breath and you get grounded and you center in and you ask yourself, how do I feel right now? Because a
Mhm.
lot of times in narcissistic relationships, we feel we ruminate a lot, we're anxious, we're
Yes.
can even struggle with being productive, or our work can suffer. We feel foggy, we feel confused, we feel
Mhm.
hypervigilant. You feel so many things, and these are all warning signs. Like,
Yep.
logically, you may not know what's going on, but your body knows because your body
Yes.
reacts to energy.
Yes, 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 and yes. I wrote a book on intuition. I'm so
Oh, well,
passionate about intuition.
you got
And
it.
the body will let you know. And I was just talking to my therapist, and she's like, if you are feeling anxious all the time, it's not good for you. Let
Yeah.
it go. Just let it go, And it's so true with relationships. When I find myself feeling really, really anxious, I also have an anxious attachment system. So I'm
Yes.
learning to tease out what is my attachment system, and then what's the sign of this is not good for you. And so we
Right.
all have our own attachment systems we're working with too. But yeah, you feel that anxiety in your body pretty chronically, when
Mm-hmm.
you're in
Mm-hmm.
these relationships.
Yeah, because you are always you you're kind of entering into a game you never intended to play. When
Yes.
you enter into a relationship with a narcissist, you are entering into the vortex that is the narcissistic cycle of abuse. You
Mhm.
don't know that, but your body always knows something is off, that you're unsafe with this person, that
Yes.
they're looking for ways to criticize you. Your mind goes to work by trying to justify and logically explain and make sense of their
Mhm.
behavior. And that's where we get all the justifications and excuses. Like, you shouldn't have to work that hard for people's behaviors to make sense. If you
Right.
have to really think, oh, I
Yes.
wonder if they didn't mean that, or that it was probably this, or I'm sure it was just this, or they had a bad day. Like, if you're having to do that consistently, then there is a problem, because people tell us who they are really are through their actions, not their words.
Yes, 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 and yes, absolutely. And they tell us pretty early on, like, despite the love bombing and
Mm-hmm.
how it feels so good, like, there are those things with the actions that you'll see emerging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, again, you have to take that time to
Yes.
build your healthy sense of self. Because if you are starting from like already feeling confused and self doubt before the narcissist ever enters your world,
Mhm.
then you get in this place where you feel like, well, is it me, is it them, oh, well, I've always been kind of insecure, so it's probably just me. And
Right.
so you self gaslight, you question your own reality
Yep.
constantly.
Yep.
So if you can, get to a healthier place where you listen to your body, you listen to the reactions, you learn to trust yourself,
Yes.
then you can actually, it's so much easier at that point to
Yep.
differentiate and to discern, the healthy ones from the toxic ones.
It is. It is. Yep. Just getting into your body, seeing how you feel, that intuition, and not questioning yourself. Like, when we start wondering if we're insane, ding, 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 like,
It's so true.
huge. Like, you're in it.
Right.
You're in an
Yeah.
abusive relationship. I don't care what it looks like or how you can justify it. You are in one.
Yeah, and that's something I often ask people too, is to think of a healthy relationship. A lot of times, many of us are more forgiving of intimate partners, but less so of relationship or friendships. So a lot of
Mm,
times we'll have healthy friends, but then we'll still pick toxic partners. So I'll tell people, think of your friend. Like, what's the healthiest relationship you know? Okay, they have
right.
someone in mind. I'm like, okay, do you ever like question yourself constantly when you're with them? No.
Mm,
Do you ever feel, unheard, disrespected, criticized? No, I feel really supported. Okay. They
yeah.
listen to you, when you have a problem. Yeah, they're very empathetic. Okay. There's your healthy model. This is how you
Mhm.
should feel in an intimate relationship. But
Yes.
because of family dynamics, attachment issues, traumas, we make excuses for partners that we don't make for
Yes.
friends.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. Ah, it's so true. This is all such great information. So tell us, do you have any parting tips or parting words? I mean, you've given us so much great information, but is there anything you want to leave our audience with that stands out as,
Yeah. Yeah, I know so much. So many more avenues we could explore,
yeah,
but I think trusting your intuition, and as you know all too well, is key. That's going to be a big part of my book as well, as exploring that aspect because it's so big. But I guess the three R's that I tell people to kind of keep in mind to deal with narcissists is resist, recognize, and recover.
Mm,
So resist means
mm.
start slowly setting those boundaries. Recognize means doing the work to build, awareness and understanding of what's happening, and recover. Make sure you do the healing work, because if you don't, you leave yourself vulnerable for those future narcissistic relationships.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So much wonderful, powerful information. I am so grateful you were able to join us. And
Yes, me
how
too.
can our audience find you and connect with you because you're doing such incredible work?
Yeah, well, I'm on almost all the social media. You can find me at Chelsea Brooke Cole. If you want to go to my website, I have more narcissistic resources, like free resources, articles, videos, all kinds of things. If you really want to stay in touch and if you want to be notified about my book, I would encourage people to go to chelseabrookecole.com/newsletter, and you can sign up there for my bi-monthly narcissistic abuse newsletter, and that'll be where I will first tell people about my book opening as well.
Oh, great. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and continuing to help the world understand how to get out of these toxic relationships.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we could talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Take good care.
All right, you too. Bye bye.